The email arrived on a Tuesday, which I remember because Tuesdays are when I schedule my client check-ins, and I had 3 of them that afternoon, and I was trying to get through my morning work cleanly before they started. I had a logo project on the left screen and my email on the right, and I was doing that thing where you're working on one thing and half watching the other for anything that requires attention. The sender name meant nothing to me. The subject line said, "I need to send you some documents. I believe you have a right to know this." My first impulse was to delete it. That impulse was immediate and trained. I don't open communications from senders I can't verify. I haven't for 7 years. And the impulse to delete is fast and clean, and I have followed it many times without regret. I moved the cursor to the trash icon. I didn't click it. I read the body instead. His name, his publication, the name of the investigation, his description of what he'd been working on for 4 years, his acknowledgement, careful, specific, that I had been a member of the community between particular years he named correctly, his professional, low-pressure request to speak with me, his assurance that he was publishing regardless, and that he was contacting me because he believed I had a right to know before it was public. I didn't reply. I opened the attachments instead. 14 case files loaded one by one. The connection in the coffee shop was slow, and I watched them appear, document by document, each one titled with a case reference number and a jurisdiction. 3 countries. I opened the first one and read the header. His name. I opened the second. His name. The third. His name. I sat with my hands in my lap and watched the rest of the files load, and his name appeared at the top of each one, 14 times, in the same clean serif font the case management system used for everything. The font that makes documents look official and final and already decided. I have been gone from the community for 7 years. I left when I was 24. I moved to a different city. I changed my name. Legally, the paperwork took 8 months, but it is mine now. It has been mine long enough to feel like it always was. I work from home on graphic design contracts, which I chose partly because you can build a real professional identity in this field without needing anyone to verify where you came from. I have a clean professional history in this city. I have friends here. I have a life here that is genuinely mine. I have been careful, deliberate, systematic, quiet about it. I have been building a life that does not connect back, and I have been doing it for 7 years, and I have been reasonably certain that it has worked. I'm sitting at my desk looking at 14 case files with his name at the top of each one. And the question I'm asking myself is the one I thought I'd already answered. Was I ever as gone as I thought I was? Let me back up. Let me tell you what you need to know, and then I'll tell you what happened after the email. I came into the community at 12. My family joined. This is not unusual. Most members join as families. The community draws families specifically. That is part of its design. The design is good. I want to be honest about that, because the design being good is how the design works. The community is warm and coherent, and it provides something that a lot of people are genuinely missing. I grew up inside that warmth. It was real. I'm not disowning it. He was the founder. He had been the founder since before I was born. He was present at everything. The twice-monthly community dinners, the study sessions, the weekend retreats. He was not a remote authority. He was physically present, consistently, in the community's daily life, and he had a specific ability to make each person feel addressed specifically by what he said. I watched adults who were educated and skeptical and accomplished sit in those rooms and feel that he was speaking directly to them. I watched it happen to them, and I felt it happen to me. I was 16 the first time he spoke to me directly. Not at a meeting, not in a formal setting. After one of the dinners, which ran long, which they always did, long tables, everyone present, food that people had made themselves, the kind of gathering that has a physical warmth to it that I don't have a cynical word for, because the warmth was real. I was having a conflict with another member, something small by any measure outside the community, large within the community's logic. He noticed. He found me after the meal. He didn't make a point of it. He appeared beside the person I was talking to, said something easy and sociable, and the conversation reorganized itself so that he and I were talking. He remembered something I had said 3 weeks earlier in a group meeting. He connected it to what I was going through. He asked 2 questions that told me he had been paying attention to me specifically, not to the community in general, to me as a person. He said my name in a way that meant, I know you as a distinct individual, not just as a member. I trusted this feeling completely. I was 16 and I trusted it with my whole self. The way you trust things at 16 when someone makes you feel genuinely seen for the first time by someone whose attention matters. I built 8 years of trust on that evening. I am 31 and I have been going back to that evening trying to understand what I was inside of, and I have not yet found a way to do it that doesn't cost something. Because the experience was real. It happened to me, and it was real while it was happening. I am not going to say it wasn't, because I found that saying something wasn't real is just another way of avoiding the harder thing, which is understanding what it was. What I understand now is that the specific form of attention he gave was something he could extend to many people simultaneously. I was not the only person who felt seen by him in that particular way. There was a community of people who felt seen by him, who felt that he had noticed them specifically, and that feeling was the mechanism of trust. And seeing can be a real act and a strategic act at the same time. That is the thing I have been sitting with. Those are not mutually exclusive. I wish they were. I stayed until I was 24. I left because something in me said, this is the moment, or there will not be one. I did not have a plan. I did not have anywhere to go. I did not know how to be a person outside the context that had shaped me. I left anyway because I have learned that there are some decisions you make before you're ready, or you don't make them at all. I have been building a life since that moment, and I am still building. That is where I am. My apartment is on the 3rd floor of a building with a coded entry. The street side curtains are always closed. I installed them in the 2nd week of living here, before I put up anything else, before anything decorative, before anything that was about making the space feel like mine. The curtains were the first thing I did. At the time, I told myself it was about light. I'm a morning person, I wake early. I don't want to be woken by street light. That was the explanation I gave myself. I have not looked at the explanation closely for 7 years. I am looking at it now. The desk faces the wall, my back to the door. I changed this after the 1st week, when I realized I couldn't work facing the door. Couldn't sit with the door behind me but couldn't work facing it either. So I turned the desk and put my back to it, and told myself that was just how I preferred to work. I've had this set up in every space I've lived in since I left. I have not examined this until now. My email account, the separate one, not connected to my work identity, not connected to my primary accounts. I created it when I left. It is the account I use for communications I want insulated. I have been careful about it. The journalist found it. I still don't know how. I have gone back through everything I've ever used it for, looking for where it might have been exposed, and I have not found the place. The not finding is its own kind of information, and it is not the comfortable kind. I read the case files in 2 sessions at a coffee shop down the block from my building, on a laptop I keep for this kind of thing, not connected to my home network, not the machine I use for work. The coffee shop smells of roasting espresso in a particular way before it fills up, a smell that is cleaner and sharper when it's quiet in there. And I was there early both times, first one in, and I remember sitting with that smell and the files on the screen and trying to approach them the way I approach complex documents for work, systematically, breaking them into components, noting what is specific and what is general. 15 years of investigation across 3 countries, financial fraud against community members in multiple jurisdictions, exploitation of dependent relationships, patterns of coercive control that operated through the community's institutional structures. He has not been convicted. He has resources. He has been using those resources to extend the legal processes for 15 years, and the extension itself is part of the story, because delay is a strategy, and he is very good at strategy. I was not a victim in the specifically enumerated ways. I want to be clear about this because the distinction matters to me, and because I think it's possible to carry harm that does not fit into the categories that have been named, and I want to be precise about what category I'm in. I was a community member from ages 12 to 24. I was present. I was subject to the community's interpretive framework for 12 years. I may have seen things I did not understand as what they were. I found 3 situations in those files, 3 events I was present for. The case files described each one clearly, with the specific language of documentation, dates, participants, sequence of events, what happened and in what order. I read the case file version, and then I read my memory version, and they were not the same event. They were the same event described from 2 completely different interpretive positions. The case file was describing what happened. My memory was describing what I had been taught to understand was happening. I was at those events. I saw those events. I understood them using the framework the community had given me, which was the only framework I had. Looking at them through a different framework now changes what I see, the way a figure ground illusion changes. The same image, and then you see the other thing in it, and then you cannot see the original thing the way you saw it before. I was 20 when I was at the first event, 22 at the second. I keep asking myself at what age I should have known what I was looking at, and I don't have an answer, and I'm not sure the question is the right one, but I keep asking it anyway. There is a thing that happens when you've been inside something for long enough, and then you step outside and look back at it. You are not the same person who was inside it. You are looking with different eyes at events that the original person, the person you were, experienced from the inside. These are not the same perspective. I know this. I remind myself of this. And still I sit with those 3 events and I want to ask, what did I fail to see? Nothing, maybe. The person I was at 20 had exactly the capacity to understand what she was seeing that 12 years inside that community had given her. That is the honest answer. It does not make me feel better. It is not supposed to. 3 weeks after the email, I went back to the coffee shop. I had not opened the separate account since the journalist contacted me. I had been letting myself think, which is what I do when I don't have enough information to act. The morning was gray and wet, and the coffee shop was warm in a way I was grateful for. I ordered, I sat in the back corner, I opened the isolated laptop. I had 4 months of messages I hadn't seen. Not from the journalist. From 3 different addresses I didn't recognize. Brief messages sent over 4 months, starting in early winter. The first was a request to make contact. Just that, a request. A phone number I didn't recognize, no identification. The second was a reminder. The third said, "We know you're well. We know you're well." I read it. I closed the laptop. I put my hands in my lap and I sat with the coffee shop sounds around me. The machine steaming milk, 2 people at the counter laughing at something, the door opening and letting in a thread of cold air, and I sat there for a while. My coffee was on the table. I picked it up. I put it down. I opened the laptop again. The message was still there. I had not imagined it. I created that account so that it couldn't be found. I was careful about this. I have been careful about most things for 7 years, and this was something I was specifically careful about. Someone found it anyway and sent 3 messages over 4 months, and the third one said, "We know you're well," which is a statement of surveillance in the grammar of a reassurance, and I sat there in the coffee shop trying to figure out which question scared me more. Who found it, or how? Both questions. Both at the same time, and I couldn't separate them into a priority order. I just sat with both of them and drank my coffee and tried to look like a person doing ordinary morning things. I replied to the journalist, not through the account they'd found. I was already thinking this way, already treating the account as a compromised channel. I used a different method, one I will not specify because some specificity is not useful. I told him I wanted to meet in person. He agreed. He named a time. I spent the rest of that week going about my work. I had a branding project, a small company, good people, a project I'd taken on 4 months earlier that was in the final stages. I worked on it. I attended my client check-ins. I made food. I went for my usual walks at my usual times and did not change my routine in any visible way. The organization, I knew about this organization. I had known about it for 3 years. A resource for people leaving high-control communities. A place I had been aware of without calling, had not yet been called. I was not ready. I was building toward ready. What I was doing in that week, underneath the ordinary work of the days, was going back. Not physically, in memory. I was trying to build an account of what I knew that could be separated into what I saw, what I understood at the time, what I understand now. I was trying to separate the layers because some things in those layers might be useful, and I needed to know which before I talked to the journalist. The 3 events. The first was a financial matter, a community member, older, who had made a specific arrangement with him about the management of savings. I was 20, and I was present when the arrangement was discussed. Partially, not the whole conversation. I heard a portion. I understood it as a voluntary gift, which was the community's language for it. The case file described the same transaction differently. The case file used the word coercion. I can describe what I heard. I can describe what I understood it as. I can describe the difference between those 2 things. I don't know if that is useful. I thought it might be. The second was a weekend retreat, the kind the community ran several times a year. I was 22. There was a specific session, a closed session I was present for as a note-taker. I had good handwriting. I was often asked to take notes at formal sessions. There were 4 people in the room besides me. I took notes on what was said. I understood what was said as guidance, as pastoral direction, which was the community's language for what he called the sessions where he counseled members individually. The case file described a session matching those dates as a coercive disclosure event. I still have the notes. I have had them for 9 years, and I have not looked at them. I knew I kept them. I did not examine why. They are in a specific place in my apartment, and I have not moved them in 7 years, and I know exactly where they are. The third was a meeting I attended at the edge of, waiting outside a room for someone who was inside. I heard portions of what was happening inside. I understood what I heard in the community's framework. I can describe what I heard now, in the framework I have now, and the description is different. 3 things. I could speak to 3 things. I did not know yet if I would. The journalist's office was in a building I had not been to before, a floor of a larger media building, open plan and noisy in the way media spaces are. Printers, voices, someone's speakerphone leaking through an office wall. He was younger than I expected. He carried a small notebook and he looked at me with the specific attention of someone who has learned to make people comfortable. I recognized the technique. I did not say this. He thanked me for coming. He offered tea. I said yes, which I sometimes do when I don't know what to do with my hands. He told me again what he had told me in the email. He was publishing. He had enough. He was publishing regardless of what I decided. He had contacted me because I had a right to know before it became public. He asked if I had any questions. I asked him, "How did you find the email account?" He said, "Through a community document that was shared with us, a list of contacts." He showed me the document, an internal list several years old, with names and contact information for members who had left or were leaving. My contact in the separate account was on it. My previous name was next to it. Someone had compiled a list of people who'd left and their contact information, and that list had found its way into his investigation materials. A list of people who'd left. That was what I was on. A list that someone had made and kept. I picked up my tea. I put it down. I looked at the notebook in his hands and I chose what to say. He told me then, after I'd processed the document, after I'd asked a few questions and received answers, that I fit a pattern. He had spoken to 12 people who left the community, people who left in specific circumstances, specific years, specific profiles. The pattern was people who, when they left, knew something, even if they didn't yet have words for knowing it. My leaving fit the pattern. He said this clearly, without emphasis, the way a doctor reads a result that has implications. He was watching my face while he said it. He told me that others who fit the pattern had been located and contacted by community-adjacent people after leaving. Monitoring, he called it. Passive monitoring in most cases. One person had disappeared for a week and come back. She had not spoken about where she went. He didn't speculate about it in front of me. He said, "I'm telling you this because you have a right to know." I thanked him. I said I needed to think. I left. On the train home, I thought about that phrase, right to know. It is a generous phrase. It implies that information is something you can give a person as a gift, But you can't give someone a right to know and then take back what they know with it. You can't give them the case files and the list and the pattern and the disappeared person and then restore the Tuesday morning with the logo on the left screen and the email on the right. I thought about this on the train, which runs underground for part of the route, and in the dark stretches of tunnel I could see my own face reflected in the window. I got home. I went up to the 3rd floor. I went inside. I checked the lock. I went to the desk. I sat down. I was already sitting in the chair when I realized I had moved to the chair that faces the door. I had not sat in this chair since I bought it. I had bought it because I needed seating, and because it was good and inexpensive, and I had put it against the wall facing the door, and I had never sat in it because I had never wanted to sit facing the door. I was sitting in it now. The street side curtains were closed. They were always closed. They had been closed since the 2nd week. I had told myself it was about light. I was looking at the curtains and I was not telling myself it was about light. I have been careful for 7 years. I moved cities. I changed my name. I created a separate account. I built a professional identity that doesn't connect back. I turned my desk to face the wall, and I installed the curtains before I put up anything else. And I have never in 7 years sat in the chair that faces the door, because I haven't needed to. And the account was found 4 months ago. I have been receiving messages for 4 months from an address I don't recognize. Messages that say things like, "We know you're well." Okay, stop. Think. The distance I built was real. It exists. I have a life in this city. I have a name that is legally mine. The account being found does not undo the distance. The account being found means the distance has a limitation I did not know about. Those are different things. One is more manageable than the other. I need to figure out which one I'm inside of. I picked up my phone. I dialed the organization's number. I had known it for 3 years. I had not called it. I was calling it now. A woman answered. Her voice was calm and specific. The voice of someone who has had many versions of this conversation and has learned to make each one the conversation it needs to be. She asked me to describe the situation. I described it. I was precise. Dates, the journalist's name, the account, the 3 messages, the document the journalist had shown me, the pattern he had described, the woman who had disappeared for a week. She listened. She asked clarifying questions. She was methodical. When I had finished, she said, "What you've described is consistent with a pattern we've seen with this organization." She said, "The risk level for someone in your position requires assessment." She said, "Do not contact the journalist through the account they found. Use a different channel." She said, "Report the account address to us so we can trace the messages." She said, "Don't change your physical routine visibly." She also said, "You're not alone in this. I know that's something they say. I know it's possible she says it in every call." I didn't care. It landed anyway. 7 years of being the only person who knew where I'd come from and what I'd left, and why the curtains were always closed. And a stranger on the phone said, "You're not alone in this." And something in me that had been very tight for a very long time released one small increment of its tension. I gave her the account address. I gave her the message dates. She said they would be in contact within 5 days. She said, "Is there anything else you want to tell me before we finish?" And I thought, yes, a lot, but not tonight. I said no. I thanked her. I hung up, sat there for a while. Then I got up and made tea. Not from the good tin I save for actual occasions, but the everyday box. The one that is always on the counter. And I went to the other chair, the one that faces the back of the apartment, the east-facing wall. I sat there, and I drank the tea, and I looked at the back wall, and I was aware of the street-side curtains being closed behind me. I let them be closed. It was a choice and not a choice at the same time, and I was learning to let that kind of thing be what it was. Before I made the call, before I picked up the phone, there was a period in that chair, the door-facing chair, where I sat with what I had been building towards since the email arrived. He said my name at 16 in a way that meant, "I know you." He said it, and I trusted it with everything in me, and I built 8 years on it. When I left at 24, part of what I was leaving was a specific grief I couldn't name yet. The grief of no longer being known in that way. That specific, complete attention. The sense that I mattered as a particular person to someone whose attention was significant. It took me 2 years after leaving to understand that being known by someone who uses knowledge as a tool is not the same as being known by someone who cannot use it against you. 2 years. I understood it at 26. I have been working with that understanding for 5 years. What I was sitting with at 31 was something adjacent to this, harder in a different direction. He knew my name. He knew my specific self. He knew my struggles at 16 and the shape of my doubts at 18, and the particular quality of my questions at 20. And all of that knowing was real. It happened. The knowing was genuine in the way that paying close attention to a person makes knowing genuine. And the knowing was also a tool, and I gave him the person to know. I gave him 8 years of the person I was becoming, and he had my trust, and I gave him access to it freely because I thought being seen meant what I thought it meant. I gave my formative years to a context that was using my trust. This is different from being harmed directly. I know the difference, and I want to be precise about it. It is a quieter kind of harm. A harm without a specific moment you can point to. A harm that is spread across years and distributed through ordinary days. It is harder to name and harder to account for, and therefore easier to dismiss. And I have been partially dismissing it for 7 years because dismissal was useful. I was 12 when I came into the community. I was 24 when I left. Those are the years that make you. Those are the years when the architecture of the self is being built, and the architecture I built was built inside that context, with those materials, shaped by those relationships and that framework and his specific attention. I am not that person anymore. I have been building a different person for 7 years, but the architecture underneath is what it is, and knowing that the materials were partly chosen for me by something I didn't understand I was inside of. That is the grief without a clean name. Not rage, not fear exactly. A specific grief for something I gave without knowing I was giving it, to something that was not what it presented itself as being, in years that cannot be recovered. I was 12. I didn't choose. I went where my family went, and I left at 24 when I could. And I have been building since then, and the building is real, and the life is real, and I am still building, and I am still leaving, every day slightly more. And the distance I built was real, even if it had a limitation I didn't know about. And all of these things are true at the same time. And sitting in the chair that faces the door, I understood that I had been treating them as mutually exclusive, as though the limitations in the distance made the distance false, as though the way the community was using my trust made the experience of trust false. And they are not mutually exclusive. The distance is real and limited. The trust was real and used. I need both parts of both sentences or I'm being imprecise. And I have been imprecise about this, and I am trying to stop. I picked up my phone and I called. 5 days later, the organization contacted me. The messages in the account had come from a server used by community-adjacent contacts in my region. Not from him. Adjacent. Passive monitoring, I was told, rather than active interest at this time. I held on to the phrase "at this time" for a while after the call. Then I let it go, or tried to, because the alternative is staring at it indefinitely, and that is not a use of time I can sustain. Passive can become active. I know this. I was told this. I was given guidance on how to proceed, and I am following it. I contacted the journalist through the new channel. I had decided what I would give and what I wouldn't, and I gave what I decided. Not on record, I am not going on record. Not because I am afraid, or not only because I am afraid, but because I have thought carefully about what going on record costs and what it accomplishes, and I have decided that what I can offer in background is more useful and less costly than what I can offer on record, and that this is an acceptable calculation. I gave him 3 things: the 2 events and the notes. The notes. I got them from their place in the apartment. They had not moved in 7 years. I found them immediately. And I photographed each page on the isolated laptop, and I sent the images through the secure channel. I had written clearly. I always wrote clearly. The notes said what the notes said, and I did not annotate them, and I did not explain them. They spoke for themselves. The journalist thanked me. He asked if I wanted to be acknowledged, even anonymously, in the published piece. I said no. He said he understood. He said, "Thank you for trusting me with this." I said, "I'm not sure trust is the right word." He said, "Fair enough." We finished the call, and that was the end of it. Or the end of my part of it. His part continues. The filing, the fact-checking, the legal review, the publication. His part will continue for months, and I will not be part of it, which is what I chose. And I am choosing to believe the choosing was right. I don't know when it will publish. He told me a rough timeline that I am not going to share because I don't know who reads what and I am still careful. I am going to continue being careful for the foreseeable future. The organization is monitoring the account. I am following the guidance. I am not changing my visible routine. I am doing my work. I picked up a new contract 2 weeks ago, a good one. A packaging design project for a company that makes things I believe in. The kind of work where you know the people you're making something for and you like them. I am designing things that people will look at in shops, hold in their hands, think briefly about the visual choices. I am trying to stay inside that work. I am partially successful. Partial is what I have, and partial is acceptable, and I am learning the difference between partial as a failure and partial as the actual condition of things. Not everything resolves completely. Not everything is supposed to. My friends here don't know where I came from, not any of them. I have good friends, real ones, people I've built real things with over 7 years, and none of them know this part of me. This has been a choice and a protection, and also a specific form of loneliness that I have been carrying so long I stopped noticing the weight of it. I am noticing it now. I don't know what to do about it yet. I know I will need to do something, eventually, because I am learning that careful is not the same as free, and I want to be less careful and more free, and the path between those two things runs, at least partly, through being known by people who cannot use the knowledge. I have not figured out how to start. I am going to figure it out, not today. The published investigation when it comes will be public. His name will be in it, the community's name, the cases from 3 countries. If anyone who knows me now reads it and recognizes something, and asks me, I will have to decide what to say. I am holding this as a future problem that I cannot solve in advance, and trying not to spend too much time holding it. Sometimes I am successful. This is the thing I have been living in for 6 weeks, not knowing if he knows where I am. The organization is assessing. The messages were adjacent, not direct, passive at this time. I have 4 walls and a coded entry and curtains that face the street, and I am following the guidance and I am being careful, and I am doing the work, and I am making tea in the evenings, and I am getting through the days. I've been getting through days for 7 years. I am good at it. I would like to become good at something else as well. Good at days that do not require getting through. I am working toward that. Working toward it is its own kind of progress even when it is invisible from the outside. There is a morning I keep coming back to. Not because it's important, but because it was ordinary, and I want ordinary things to be what they are. A week after the organization called. Early morning, the light coming in from the east-facing windows, which is the good light in my apartment. The light that comes in clean before anything has happened. I made coffee. I stood in the kitchen and I drank it. I looked at the street-side curtains. They were closed. I stood there with my coffee, and I looked at them, and I thought about opening them. I thought about what it would be like to open them, to let the street-side light in, to let the apartment exist as a place that faces both directions. I didn't open them. I finished my coffee. I went to my desk. I had work to do. I did the work. The curtains will open one day. I don't know when. I am being patient with not knowing when, and I am trying to decide if that patience is wisdom or accommodation. And I have not decided, and I am also, slowly, learning that I don't have to decide everything. That some questions can be carried, that carrying them is not the same as avoiding them, that I can sit with, the curtains will open, and also, not today, and let both things be true without one canceling the other. He said my name at 16 and I heard it land and I trusted it. That was real. I am 31 and I am learning what else is real. I'm still learning. I have not finished. That is where I am.